Good evening, chat. How are you guys doing today? Um, Good evening, guys. We got well, it's Sunday. It's Sunday today, and jeez. Watch 5 more minutes. Gonna pop up on the clock. No, I just had to take care of something, and I wasn't ready yet. So 5 more minutes. You survived. You survived. Hey, guys, welcome. It's Sunday. You know, about to have vacation Mondays, and well, the snow started to melt. Still good. So, hope you guys had a very nice weekend. It's been very fun overall. I hope you guys hope you guys had a great day. Now we are going to talk about a bit of an interesting case. A case a couple people brought up to me and it just now resolved. And it's a case about Benchmade. And Benchmade is one of the kind of like one of the longer standing, knife companies, and for Benchmade they make a lot of handheld knives, for personal use, hunting, and tactical knives. They also were famous for making bally songs, butterfly knives. They've been around for quite a while, and in fact, in one of the more interesting things Benchmade's done more recently is under their ownership in the last couple of years, they actually done some made some comments over like anti-Second Amendment related things like that, kind of hurt themselves. But overall, Benchmade is kind of one of the bigger names out there, like along with Kershaw. They're one of the huge names. They're one of the big daddies when it comes to the knife market. And then Montana Knife Company, they are, I wouldn't you can call them upstart, but they are a smaller company. They are run by a ABS master bladesmith. And they actually have quite a few people working for them. Like Will Stelter. Um, Will Stelter, he's a knife maker. He's a young guy, makes pretty cool stuff. He is actually affiliated with them, and they're making knives. They make a lot of cool stuff. And this lawsuit comes down to what happened there. Now, they should have bought Ronco knives. Yeah, you could cut drywall with them. So, hold on here. I was late with dinner, so I'm the reason. He's like, "Oh, stop! You don't have to." Hold on 1 second, baby, babe. You don't have to apologize. You did nothing wrong. You made a very, very amazing dinner. So, I just don't want you to feel like you're coming in here to apologize in the chat. You need to walk in here and be like, "Fuck you, chat. I made him dinner. So suffer." I just want you to know I love you. So, no, I did not need a poo break. I promise. That comes later. So, do you need a? Did I just call you bitch made? No. Well, you, yes, Kimbo, yes, just you. Brandon, let's go. Cooking knives, no. Knives you carry in your pocket. Folding knives, tactical knives, all that kind of stuff. Now, why are they suing? We're going to get to that. Steve Hilliard, so what about Spyderco? Spyderco is also a really good one. I've never had a Spyderco, though. I mean, I've only had Kershaw and Benchmade when it comes to those. And even then, Chad, I think I mentioned this before. I can't have nice knives. I have a really bad issue with losing them. So I generally stick with like $25 and below knives. Kind of like the Nicholas Muse special. I lose them too much. So, like an $80 Kershaw or $120 Benchmade, or like a $200 Columbia River knife and tool. I can't afford to have those knives because I'm going to lose them, and that's not a good thing. So, what did you make? Oh yeah, it was very nice, very very spicy, but in a good way. Yes, they're eating everyday carry knives. We'll call it that. Everyday carry knives. I mean, guys have never seen them before. We're just gonna scroll. Spyderco is very popular in Europe. It's because I think they make stuff that doesn't lock, and I think that's a requirement in Europe. You can't have locking knives. Well, anyways, Benchmade knives. You guys have never seen what they do. Now the only thing is, I could show you knives because they're not going to freak out about that. But They will not panic about this. But guys, here's what Benchmade makes. Here's a selection of things they do. I am not sponsored by Benchmade or Montana Knife Company, but here is what they carry. They carry different. Um, this is typically what most people know Benchmade for are their folding knives. They make all different kinds. They do a lot, and they're pretty good. I think people who generally have them generally don't have really any problems with them, but they're pretty good. They're pretty cool. Overall, their knives they work. They cut and stab. And if you guys weren't aware of what a bally song or a butterfly knife is, this is one of them. And obviously, the sides fold up and encompass the knife, and it opens like a butterfly. Anyways, that is Montana Knife Company. If you guys have never, or I'm sorry, Benchmade. If you've never seen what they do, I don't know about carrying a cookie knife in my pocket yet. I wouldn't do that. That sounds very scary. Um, no, I know Spyderco's are locking, but I also know they make knives that don't lock. And I thought that was part of their thing was in Europe. I don't know. But I know, yes, overall they make knives that lock. In Montana Knife Company, they make similar knives. They make knives that are a little bit different, a little different what they do here. So they have knives. You want to see what they carry in stock? You can carry. They do some culinary knives as well, but a lot of their stuff is, as you can see, it's a lot of knives that have actual practical use. This is all. They also make like skinning knives. They make bushcrafting knives, knives that you would carry on a sheath. You can carry out in the woods. That would be part of like your hunting gear. Hatchets, but they make all the same stuff. They make a lot of similar things. They make their own sets of knives as well, and it's a similar market. It's a very similar market for them. Mavka says, I think they're out the front switchblades are meh. Yeah, I've never had one of theirs, but I've heard people say that. But you gotta find like when it comes to the out the front folders, and guys, when I'm talking about well, hold on, may as well just say, um, an out the front knife chat when we're talking about those. Basically, it's something like this. It's something like this here. This is an out the front knife. Um, so it's a knife where the handle is retracted into the knife blade retracts into the handle and then comes out the front. So they're really neat. Now the problem is a lot of out the front knives. That's why, because that's where the blade comes from out the front. Kind of suck. Benchmade makes it out the front. I'm not really big. Like I've seen some good ones. Like Microtech does really. You're gonna pay a lot for an out the front knife. So out the front, they're a gimmick. I think they have a use. I think they have a use. Jack Bauer had an out the front knife in 24, and you know what? That's good enough for me a reason to have one. Stacy says pokey knives, very pokey knives. Yes, these are pretty much illegal in Europe. I bet these are illegal in Canada too. Who knows? But yes, you cannot carry knives like these in Europe, especially not in Britain. Don't go to Britain with those. Um, is it like a gravity knife? No, because a gravity knife, you just the switch at the top, and then the knife falls free. So it's not really like a gravity knife. But yeah, Microtech does a really good job. Very, very good job. Yes, Mads is correct. That's the other thing. Cheap knives have an advantage. You don't feel bad beating on them. Yep, you don't feel bad taking a $10 knife from the gas station and using it as a pry bar. You don't feel bad if the blade gets bent. You don't have a problem if you you chip off a piece of the blade. You could damage them and you don't feel really bad about it. So, Brimstone says these are illegal in Illinois. Yes. Oh, Brittany says, I have a Montana fixed blade and it's quite sturdy. Well, I'm glad you like it. And Pimp Poppy says, is this Australia legal? Probably not. I think you need a license for a knife like this, a knife. Dick says the only thing legal in my state is full auto unless you have the license. Okay. Haven King says, can you add an explosive charge and make them into knife launching guns? No, but there are ballistic knives, and those are actually regulated, so you have to be careful with those. Um, there is um, this is this is an actual thing. If you guys have never seen these before, like this is a real thing. This is called a ballistic knife. Um, these are very dangerous, and you can get depending on where you live. This can be a lot of trouble. So, uh, there can be a lot of problems with these. So, um, depending on how your knife is set up, it can be restricted as an NFA item under the National Firearms Act. So, depending on what type of propellants used, how things are charged, especially if it's an explosive charge, even if it's a small explosive charge, you're dealing with the National Firearms Act. So, be very careful. But yes, they do make knives that shoot a blade. People have thought about all kinds of things. Ben Pook says you can't carry a knife over 3 inches in the UK. Yeah, I've heard that, but I also heard like a lot of things are illegal. Tim says, yeah, these are illegal in Australia. It's kind of what I figured. Can you confirm? Can confirm you probably need a license for that knife. Well, thank you, Brew Marys. Oh, right. Let's see here. What do you guys at? So we're here a couple minutes. Time people get in here. So we're gonna get started. Yes, the Spetsnaz special. Yes, these things are. VA, you can carry almost any knife, but you cannot conceal them. Yeah, that becomes an issue. There's always an issue of, is it concealed if you're carrying a knife and it's got the clip on it and you have it clipped on your pocket? Is that clip enough to show the knife or just a little tip part of the knife shown? There's all kinds of rules on that. And then it becomes an issue of what type of knife it is you're using. And going back to these chat, people, because I've had clients come to me and say, hey, Sean, I carry a bug out. I carry a $300 knife all the time. And I carry it for defensive purposes. Am I going to get in trouble? Well, it depends. It depends if this is a tool or it's a weapon. It all depends what you're doing with it. If you happen to work in an office building somewhere and you're an engineer and you have a knife that has, it's completely clean and looks like it never gets used, yeah, you're going to have a bit of an issue. If you're just a guy walking down the street going to the bar, is this a weapon? I don't know. Is it a tool? It's all going to depend. Now, are you a guy who works on a construction site and you've got a knife, but it's all bent to shit, or the handle's got scratches on it, and it's clearly been used and your knife's all grungy and you're, like you've been working, then you could probably get away with saying it's a tool. But it all comes down, there are very critical factors that play a part in those, and it's very fact specific. And I've been able to get people out of trouble because they happen to have their knife that's everyday carry, but they were smart enough to have used it a little bit, so it's got wear and tear on it. Because otherwise, carrying a brand new spiffy knife, well, that looks like a weapon. So, something to think about depending on where you live, chat. Something to think about depending on where you live. So, your tools are your enemy's weapons. Well, yeah. Seller says I'm white collar and still have to open boxes and letters. Yeah, well, you might have a tough time selling that. Also, are you coming home from your job, or are you just driving around or walking through the park on a Saturday? I mean, if you're going to tell me use it during your job, well then, why are you working? No, well now you got a problem. So that's an issue. That's always an issue. All right, guys. So we're gonna go from here. So Benchmade in April filed a lawsuit against, I'm sorry, in March, filed a lawsuit against Montana Knife Company. And as I stated in the thing, By May, they had dismissed it. We don't know why. It doesn't say why. So here's how this thing starts off. This is in the United States District Court for the District of Oregon. Benchmade is based out of Oregon, and Oregon only has one district. So that's why you see it set up this way. There's only one district, the District of Oregon. So there's only one place. Now, there's other courts you can go to, but they went to the Portland division. And they said, and what did they file for? Intentional interference with economic relations and civil conspiracy. Now, normally you don't throw this all up in here like this, that way, but hey, it works. Now, Benchmade is suing MKC, Montana Knife Company. And they establish the parties here, and they point out that Benchmade is an Oregon corporation. Cool. And they say defendant MKC is a Montana corporation. Now, remember, how do you get jurisdiction here? Because intentional interference with economic relations, that's not a federal case. There's no federal question jurisdiction. What do you do? How do you treat the federal court? Well, they go ahead and get this set up in a way that they get into federal court. And they do the smart things. They go ahead and why did that move me over to the other side? Sorry, guys, I'm moving to the other monitor. So they go ahead and they get diversity jurisdiction. So Benchmade and MKC are citizens of different states. So bing, they have diversity jurisdiction. But remember, we've talked about this before with jurisdiction. You also need a amount in controversy exceeding $75,000. Okay, ping. So they're arguing it exceeds that. So there we go. You got your two elements. This lawsuit concerns a confidentiality agreement meant to protect trade secrets and other confidential information, things that Benchmade is heavily invested in for more than 30 years. The value of the information and protecting that information far exceeds $75,000. There you go. So that's how they're making the argument here. They argue venue is proper because a substantial part of the events or omissions giving rise to the claim occurred here. And that makes sense. If they're arguing somebody stole our information and it's information we gave to an employee and then he turned around and went to our competitor, well, that happened here. And then the court has personal jurisdiction over MKC because it purposefully directed its tortious conduct at this district. Now, they committed it in this district. They intentionally made it happen. Now, Benchmade's arguing that MKC caused or induced somebody to go ahead and do this. So therefore, yes, they've involved themselves. Now, this is a little bit of fluff here. They're trying to talk themselves up in front of the court because the court doesn't know who Benchmade is. They probably don't know. Some normie judge. Do you think he really knows anything about knives? No. So they're going to go ahead and try to figure out what's going on there. And where is... Some of you guys are funny. So Benchmade's an industry leader in design, manufacture, and marketing, and sale of knives, cutters, and cutting tools. Benchmade's been doing this for over 30 years. As a result, it has become a benchmark for innovation and quality in the knife industry. And it was, and it still is overall. Benchmade's highly regarded. Benchmade's efforts have been widely recognized. They won a outdoor from Popular Mechanics. They won an Oregon Manufacturing Award. They won from Field and Stream, a best knife, from Field and Stream, best hunting gear, a knife, all these different things. They're trying to show, look, we're so awesome. We're so sexy. We're the hot young thing. And they say Benchmade is also a leading innovator in the field of knives with dozens of issued patents. Yes, we figured out a patent to make the knife sharp. These patents cover knife mechanisms. And by mechanisms, chat, they're talking about opening mechanisms because there are multiple ways you can get these knives to open they're called assisted. Assisted folding knives because they open, but you can flick a tab or you can push on a nub and it'll pop the blade out, but it's not automatic, so therefore it's not a switchblade. Blade geometries, handle geometry, safety mechanisms, latches, sheaths, and more. At least 40 of Benchmade's knife products families are covered by one or more of the pending patent applications. And that's quite a few patents. That's quite a few patents. Now, they also developed substantial trade secrets and otherwise confidential information. And sure, they probably did. This information cannot be acquired or replicated by competitors, and hence the fact it's a trade secret. Benchmade takes reasonable efforts to maintain the secrecy of its trade secrets and other confidential information, as one should. You shouldn't just be like, oh, hey, look, come find it, guys. Yes, Robert, this is what, and Robert wanted to bring this up. I will touch on this now. Benchmade proudly assisted its local government in cutting up guns that were confiscated, and they were proud of doing it. And when Second Amendment supporters were like, hey, what the fuck? Benchmade said, fuck you, ree. And then Benchmade took a massive hit in sales because Benchmade was very popular in the Second Amendment community, and now their name's kind of shit. So they hurt themselves really bad. They hurt themselves really bad doing that. So they talk about Benchmade incorporating privacy and security for its information at the physical security infrastructure, locks on doors, and believe it or not, that's a security feature. Badge access, different levels of access for different levels of employees. Many employees cannot go into sensitive areas, and that's how you protect secrets. Benchmade facilities have certain areas that lock with a key, and they keep logs of who have the master keys. I mean, yes, when it gets to this level, if you're trying to protect things, chat, and you want to control information and resources, you have to do this kind of stuff. And some of you might say, well, this is what the government will do. Yeah, these are security practices, and they have a reason, and they exist for a reason, because they do the best at preventing people from getting involved. Bibliophile says, I remember that my whole unit stopped buying Benchmade after that. Oh yeah. Oh, Benchmade really, they stomped all over their dick when that happened. So the company maintains a comprehensive security camera system which monitors and records all activities on campus, as you're allowed to do. Visitors are required to sign acceptance and agreement to a visitor policy. That includes a non-disclosure agreement. That's not abnormal. If you go see companies, if you want to tour something or you're invited somewhere, that company's gonna say, hey, like I could get invited to go see Smith & Wesson. They could invite me out to their place, and they can say, hey, Sean, we want to show you around. By the way, sign a non-disclosure agreement. You agree not to talk about anything unless we authorize it regarding things we're R&Ding or anything we're doing once we give you the tour to the restricted areas. And a policy prohibiting unauthorized photographs within the facilities. I mean, those are two ways you can control it. Those are 100% legal. When visitors are accepted, there are strict limitations on the places they visit. For example, visitors include suppliers and vendors. So even the people they have contractual relationships with. So they're suppliers and part suppliers. And then the vendors are not allowed in areas with particularly sensitive information, including designs. Visitors have dedicated entrances and exits to keep them away from information. And they talk about visitors signing non-disclosure agreements, although you already just said that. All employees are required to sign agreements at the commencement of their employment, which require they follow all of Benchmade's policies and rules, including the rules and policies regarding trade secrets and intellectual property, which that is a very big deal. Let's see here. We are. Oh, I just saw something. Now, their trade secrets and proprietary and confidential information are kept private, and they're not published in any way outside of Benchmade. No photography is allowed on the factory floor. There are signs on windows over the floor informing viewers that photography is not allowed. Benchmade has robust IT systems designed to ensure the security of sensitive files. For example, all USB activities on computers are logged. Now, that is a very critical thing because think about it, chat. All you got to do is take a thumb drive and this thing right here, anybody who's in IT, something like this is going to cause them to shit their pants. Because this is a very common thing, this is a very common penetration technique. Take one of these and just leave it sit, and you set it up with exploiting software, and you just leave it on the ground somewhere outside where an employee might find it. Somebody's like, oh, cool, thumb drive. They pick it up, and they come into work with it, and they just, being a retard, go, oh, click, and they shove it in, and now you're in. It's actually a very common tactic. Anything hooking up to the computers that you need to document and log. So it's a very, very common control procedure. Yeah, Stuxnet's a great example of that. Benchmade employs role-based access control across all systems throughout the facility, thus restricting access files to a need-to-know basis. And guys, it's no different than military secrets, government secrets on a need-to-know basis. Anything worth protecting is on a need-to-know basis. Benchmade also uses multi-factor authentication. That's also a good protection method. And VPN connectivity. It also requires strong passwords on computer systems, which are changed every 90 days. All computers have full disk encryption. Benchmade also has rules in place to prevent the creation of auto forwards, thus stopping anyone from forwarding their emails. Now, why is all this important? And Marlene, you touched on it. And this is actually very important here. This is to show that they have robust safeguards and standards in place. Now, at this stage of the complaint, is it necessary? No, but you know what? You might as well put it in. But they're showing we've done everything possible to prevent information from leaving our facility. This wasn't an oopsie poopsie. And as you're saying, yeah, a stack of papers didn't just blow out the window and someone find them. If information gets leaked, it's because it was intentionally leaked. So that's why. That's why this is being done this way. Yes, and this is actually very common, guys, depending on where you work or what you work in. You will be, depending on if you take pictures at companies, they will confiscate your phone. And believe it or not, you're on private property. If you signed an agreement saying, you as a regular person, I give, Ford Motor Company the right to examine my phone. They're going to take your phone. And you know what? Tough shit. You were told not to take pictures. You're in someone's house. You must abide by their rules. And they're going to take your phone, examine it. They might wipe your phone. Who knows what they'll do? But that's not uncommon. And the more important things are, the more likely stuff like this happens. So just be very, yeah, that's, it happens. ZFL says Benchmade's an anti-2A liberal board. They can get bent. Well, yeah, that too. And Green Top is saying, I work for a large company that you wouldn't think at our position would need CIA level cybersecurity, but we have to sign in triplicate, and plugging something in the USB drives can lock the computer. Yeah. It's there are multiple things that will cause those kinds of issues. So we're going to get back to this. We're going to keep moving here. Afex says all the security is for naught if the computer is inside is connected to the internet. They might have air gaps. I mean, I don't know how they do it. They probably do have air gapped networks, meaning a network that's completely shut off. We don't really know. We don't know. So they talk about going back to 2015, an unnamed co-conspirator, the unknown man, was hired by Benchmade and executed as a condition of his employment a non-compete, non-solicitation, confidentiality, and arbitration agreement, hereinafter the confidentiality agreement. The agreement is noted that Benchmade is engaged in the business of manufacturing, marketing, and selling knives and other cutlery on a worldwide basis. The confidentiality agreement has the following non-competition clause. During the term of employees' employment, and that's fair. When you're working for Benchmade, you can't compete against Benchmade. That part's not really an issue. You can only have one master. And I don't think it's wrong for Benchmade to say you must choose, and you must choose wisely. And then for a period of 2 years after the termination of this agreement for any reason, meaning if you quit or if you're fired, doesn't matter. You resign, you are not for 2 years afterwards. The employee shall not within the territory. Now, you're going to say, well, what's a territory? Okay. Directly or indirectly engage in competitive business activity. Benchmade Knife Company will have all rights and remedies available to in law or equity in the event the employee breaches this non-competition covenant. So it's a non-compete. And territory is defined as follows. All states of the United States of America and every country in the world, including all countries, cities, and political subdivisions thereof, which Benchmade Knife Company customers transact business, or in which Benchmade Knife Company sells or provides products at any time during the period, commencing 2 years to the prior the commencement of employee's employment. So basically, and here's the thing. What does this mean? The entire world. The world, chat. The entire world. That is insane. You're selling knives, not fucking nuclear bombs. I mean, literally everywhere. Like, guys, that's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. Like, how do you? Number one, that could mean the entire world, basically. And yes, somebody says North Korea is probably fine. Yes. You know what, though? I'm sure Benchmade knives have been smuggled into North Korea. So North Korea is okay. But how do I know where Benchmade knives are being fucking sold if I leave the company? Am I going to go, dear Benchmade, I know when I left, I took a shit in the urinal in the executive washroom. But could you please tell me what countries you are having customers sell knives to so I can go ahead and do work in the countries where they're not? Sincerely, Bob Boberson. How well do you think that letter is going to go? It's not. It's not. It's not. But literally the whole wide world. This is a joke. This is a joke of... It's a joke. All states of the United States of America, every country in the world, the entire world. I mean, well, I guess it's great if SpaceX goes to Mars soon or the moon. You know, neater, Benchmade. I control the knife trade on the moon. But just think about it. Like, it's one thing to have, and I had a non-compete when I was doing oil work. And when we had to leave I had to leave the firm, and they let everybody go in 2015 when the oil market crashed. I signed a non-competition thing, and that was, they gave me some compensation for it in exchange. I agreed to a non-compete for a year and a half in Ohio, and it was only for drilling operations. I could represent those other companies in other fields and other endeavors. I just couldn't represent them where I would be opposing my former firm. And even then, was that probably a bit too broad? Yeah, but I wasn't looking on going back into the field anyway. And a year and a half is, that was by 2016, 2017, it's done. So, it's been out of force for a while now. But you guys are selling knives. You're not selling, like, the more non-competes, I think, have a place. The more exclusive and the more niche and the more highly specialized your knowledge, I could see that requiring a very, very robust non-compete. Okay. For example, if you know the secret formula for Coca-Cola, you know the secret formula for English muffins. And believe it or not, Thomas's English muffins have a special trade secret. They make them specially. There's a special way to make those. So, um, you guys, okay. Robot Glock is saying, was that during the fracking boom? Yes, in 2014 and 15. Oh, Lord. It was a fracking boom. And by the time I got involved right out of law school, dude, these oil companies were just shoveling money. They were literally just lighting stacks of $100 bills on fire, getting work done. Man, it was like, we're living like kings. I can tell you that much. For about the year I did it. Now, still though, the idea that you've got, like, you're making knives. There's only so many ways you can really skin a cat at the end of the day. No pun intended. Was that really a knife pun? Kind of, I guess. But like the entire world, I mean, think about how restrictive that is. For 2 years, you can't work anywhere in the world for any knife company. For any knife company, competitive business activity means in the cutlery world. In cutlery, you can't work anywhere in the world. If you want to move to, Nigeria, you're working on a Lagos. Working on Lagos, Nigeria. As long as there's some guy in Nigeria who's buying knives from Benchmade, can't go there. I'm going to go to, Kazakhstan. Well, is somebody buying Benchmade knives there? Just one knife in the 2 years. That business transaction at any time during the period commencing 2 years prior to the commencement of your employment. So it's not even before you work for the company, but 2 years before you work for Benchmade. If somebody in that country bought something, you then have to wait 2 more years to go work there and do work in that country. So that's how insane this one gets, chat. This is how this goes. So what was I saying? We were Kangs? Yeah, we were Kangs. Holy shit, it was awesome. You have no idea, chat. You have no idea. But just, guys, think about this. Garrett Payson, shop in Palestine. It's not a real country. Yeah, but I mean, right now, the only place I can think of you could probably sell knives or do work is North Korea and Syria, because I doubt anybody in Syria is buying knives. Well, actually, Iran and Russia. So Iran, Russia, North Korea, Syria. Those 4 countries. Why? Well, because Iran and Russia have sanctions against them. I'm pretty sure Syria's got sanctions against it. And North Korea, just because it's North Korea, they got sanctions too. So you're not really able to anywhere you could work is a place you wouldn't want to work. So Benchmade sells knives currently and regularly sells knives in Montana, and thus Montana is part of its territory. The non-competition clause defines directly or indirectly to include performing services as or active capacity of an employee, independent contractor, consultant, or agent of any enterprise engaged directly or indirectly in the activities prohibited by Section 1.2. Well, competitive business activity. What is that? The competitive business practice activity is the design, development, manufacture, marketing, selling, or distribution of knives and cutlery, and all other business activities related thereto. So the entire knife industry, the entire cutlery industry. You can't design, manufacture, develop, market, sell, or distribute knives or any other business activities related to it. Completely. You're completely out of it. You're out of the knife game, chat. The only thing you can probably do is sell shivs to guys in prison. You know, you can't even probably sell those because technically they're a knife. See, you're out of the shank game as well, chat. You can't do anything. So the non-disclosure of confidential information. There's another thing here. So the employee agrees during his term of agreement and indefinitely subsequent to the termination of this agreement for whatever reason, employee shall not disclose or divulge or use for his or her benefit or for the benefit of any third party the confidential information of Benchmade, knowledge of Benchmade, knife company employees will not be disclosed to another employer, and especially direct and indirect competitors, which can be used for purposes of recruitment or corporate rating of talent. Now, there is one way that you guys might say, well, that's not fair. There is something where guess who's still bound by confidentiality? I am. So part of my agreement was I agree not to disclose information, but even then, under the rules of ethics, I'm still bound by that confidential information. So I know of, drilling plans, site locations, site maps, things that were done in reaction to a blowout or somebody getting injured or this or that or the other, or dealing with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, the Ohio EPA, blah, 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 blah. I know a bunch of stuff. And guess what? It's all confidential. I can't disclose it. These guys, though, it's different. You're a private individual with confidential information. Let's see. You guys are ridiculous right now. Now, this just shows you your knowledge. It's a trade secret. You know their information. You're not allowed to use it. And you can't disclose it. Even if Montana Knife Company comes up to you and says, "Hey, bro, we heard you work for Benchmade. We'll give you 50,000 more a year to come work for us." When they talk about corporate rating of talent, they're talking about poaching. And they talk about a restriction on copying. Except as reasonably necessary to perform your job, the employee will not reproduce or duplicate any confidential information without the consent of an officer of Benchmade Knife Company. And that's just a control on information. You don't let people make copies. Employee will not copy the confidential information of third parties without the written consent of an officer of Benchmade Knife Company. Now, that's an interesting one. Like, if they happen to have information from another party, you can't take it. And they say upon returning materials, upon written request by Benchmade or upon the termination of employment, the employee will immediately return to Benchmade all confidential information and materials, including any copies or reproductions of such items the employee has made. And the employee will make no further use of any kind of information or material. You'll also return any keys, pass cards, identification cards, or the property belonging to Benchmade. That's very common. When you leave, you got to surrender your ID, surrender your key card, surrender your access codes. That's always normal. And, up here, you have information of ours. We're going to take it back from you because it's our information. You have a company cell phone, a company laptop. Sorry, give them back. See here. You guys are awful. So as they say, as used in these clauses, the term confidential information is assigned all information. All information is confidential. All information. Like, we make our knives sharp. What we call this end, the pointy end, chat. This is just my 3D printed knife, but this thing is actually pretty fucking sharp when you put an edge on it. Look, it's the pointy end, chat. That's confidential proprietary information. We call this the handle. Proprietary information, chat. You don't get to know about it. You can't tell anyone. Data or know-how in any form which has value to Benchmade Knife Company. Benchmade Knife Company customers, suppliers, or third parties, which is not generally known to the public and which is regarded by Benchmade as confidential. Confidential information includes, but is not limited to, the following: list of customers, list of suppliers and entities, financial information, tax returns, marketing plans, and strategy plans, methodologies, contracts, processes, manufacturing processes, designs, trade secrets, know-how, inventions, whether or not patentable, formulas, technical drawings, data, writings, research, techniques, concepts, product specifications, systems, plans for future products, pricing policies, price lists, cost and profit information, ideas, patent schematics, software programs, prototypes, hardware, drawings, engineering, business plans, or any other information related to Benchmade as far as the company's research, development, inventions, manufacturing, purchasing, accounting, financing, engineering, marketing, merchandising, or selling. Everything, chat. It's everything. Everything, everywhere, for everyone.
Everyone!
Literally everything is encompassed in this. Like, what kind of toilet paper do you use in the bathroom? But you can see, like I said, it means all information, chat. All right there. All, chat. It's all information. Jeez. So you say, how do you have confidential marketing? I can see how you could have confidential marketing if you had like confidential data, like you've done polling or focus grouping, as far as like how you could sell to groups. Like, I can see that being confidential information. What works best, who likes what, how do you sell to wine moms? How do you engage, the kids these days? I can see that being an issue. Yes. Yes. Zephiel says, our knives are made out of a secret material known as steel. It's the best nipping steel ever, out of Japan. It's been folded 3,000 times. Scott saying, how do you sell stuff if your price list is confidential? No. It's not your list of, not your price list. But I think they're going to argue the price list of what it costs for you to get things, and then like probably what you're proposing to sell. But also, it's one thing to go through a website and have to sit there and write down every model of knife and every derivation of that knife. So if you want all the different customization options, you have to write down all those things. But instead, if you can give them a PDF of all of that listed out in order and in like value, that would be the issue. Mads also got a good point. Rebates could be confidential. Coupon codes, all that stuff could be confidential. Jim Schuler says, other confidential information. Benchmade primarily uses the English language to communicate in its offices. Yes. Stacy says, I guess they can't compete on Forged and Fire. Well, Benchmade would never do that anyway. As a company, they would never be on that show because going on that show is a very dangerous thing. And Walter Sorrells, he's a knife maker. He has a YouTube channel. He is a master bladesmith, a long-time master bladesmith. We're going to go on tangent here. He brought up being on that show actually hurt his business because he was in the first round and his fucking knife broke. But the problem is they give you shitty mystery steals sometimes. Like, I think in his situation, it was a leaf spring from a car that had been used. Well, how do you know that leaf spring doesn't have cracks in it? Was it scanned with an ultrasound machine so you could determine if it was solid? He has no idea, so he had to make a knife out of it and it broke. Does that mean Walter Sorrells makes shitty knives? No, he's a very good knife maker. But because that's how he went on the show, he lost business because of that. He regained it very quickly. But people canceled orders because they saw on the show, his knife broke. No, I know a couple of master bladesmiths. I know one in particular, like Forge and Fire reached out to him many times. They're like, "Hey, sure, you don't want to come on?" And he's like, "Fuck no." So yeah, and even guys who are just up in that, going on the show is dangerous if you things don't go well. So just something to think about, chat. Just something to think about there. Um, but yeah, Forge and Fire would probably prevent Benchmade employees from competing. Um, Now, I say use of these clauses materials is defined to include both documents and writings. The non-compete clause restricting unnamed conspirator from engaging in activity within the territory for 2 years, and the confidentiality clauses, they work in tandem to protect Benchmade's legitimate business interests and intellectual property rights concerning its trade secrets and other information. The agreement continues to be in full force and effect. Okay? Now, you might say, why do they have to include that? Because if you were to argue, well, the agreement's not in force anymore, full force and effect, the agreement's not working, well, then you can't sue. So the agreement's still in effect. Now, they talk about what happened from there. Well, the unnamed co-conspirator had a role that required him to have access to cutting edge, pun intended, intellectual property, including confidential and trade secret information, including some of Benchmade's most sensitive documents. Are knives. Knives are sharp and they cut people. Documents that can be used by competitors to provide an unfair advance in terms of competing with Benchmade. Without investing the years of relationship development, negotiations, market knowledge, research, and development efforts undertaken by Benchmade to make the information. Without access to that information, a company that wanted to develop products that could be a Benchmade would have to invest enormous time, expense, and effort. So, um, Robot, you're saying here, you have a question. Do courts throughout the NDA complete if they find it overbroad? If not, what's the motivation to write a reasonable NDA if courts simply rewrite to be enforceable? So here's the issue. You run the risk of a court tossing it if it's too broad, depending on how you've acted. Now, a court might restructure it, fine, but if the court has to restructure it, well, now you owe attorney's fees, you owe all kinds of problems in litigation. The reason why you have a non-disclosure agreement and a non-competition agreement is you're trying to avoid litigation ahead of time. You write a robust, healthy, workable document that keeps you from having to go to court. If you've gone to court, something failed. Just like a fire suit. If you're wearing a Nomex fire suit and you still get burned, something went wrong. The idea is the fire suit should protect you. The NDA and the non-compete should protect you. So you tailor it, and it's like any piece of equipment. Any piece of equipment. You're working in a machine shop and you're given specs and requirements for a design. Okay, you're an engineer and you put it together to meet those requirements and specs. A legal document should be the same way. You should meet the legal requirements, you should meet the design specifications, and that's it. It shouldn't be doing every other thing. So if you go to court and the court has to rewrite it, well, now you might be, on the hook for attorney's fees. It can lead to a lot of problems. You don't ever want to go to court. You should want to avoid that issue. But yeah, you run the risk of losing in trial. You run the risk of losing in court, so it's dangerous. And also if companies start abusing it, you don't want to be the guy when courts figure out, okay, well, fuck you. You're gonna pay for all the abuse. Zephiel says highlighter companies are upset I switched to digital. Yeah. Yes, and John Thompson is right here. Let me see. Yeah, it's an NDA. It's time, place, and manner and scope. Just like everything in the law, it's a time, place, and manner/scope. How long, where, and when. As long as those are reasonable, it'll survive. But if it's not, that's when you have a problem. So the defendant's conspiracy. They say, upon information and belief, the conspirator decided to leave Benchmade in the fall of 2023. Thereafter, unnamed conspirator and MKC entered into a conspiracy to breach the fiduciary duties and his non-compete with Benchmade. Specifically, MKC and the conspirator agreed that he would submit his resignation at Benchmade and would thereafter take new employment for a 1-year period of time, and then would join MKC after that 1-year period. So that's not abnormal. Hey, you're going to go take a job at like a different company somewhere. And that guy found a job somewhere, and maybe MKC helped him line it up. But either way, he's not working against Benchmade, and he's out of the way. So the defendant conspired with the unnamed co-conspirator to effectuate this plan, and Benchmade limited his ability to engage in competitive activity for a 2-year period after his termination. So he got 50% of the way through the non-compete. The unnamed co-conspirator has been recruited by MKC to join its executive team, continuing essentially the same job functions he performs at Benchmade. And then on February 26th, and that means this year, unnamed co-conspirator gave notice to Benchmade that he would be leaving. February 2023. And contrary to his non-compete agreement, starting an MKC within 1 year. Which that is very weird on how you'd... It's one thing to leave your company and be quiet about it and like have a plan worked out in the background. This guy walked into his boss and said, I quit. And 1 year from now, I'm going to work for the company across the road. That's a weird flex. I would not recommend that as a flex, chat. I would not recommend that action. Unnamed co-conspirators has knowledge of substantial trade secrets and other confidential information, which is precisely the type of information that is in the agreement and the 2-year non-compete term are meant to protect. Upon information and belief, co-conspirator intends to use that trade secret and confidential information for the benefit of MKC. Now, for the first claim of relief, intentional interference with contractual relations. And they say at all times, Benchmade had a valid contractual agreement with the co-conspirator in the form of the confidentiality agreement. MKC was not a party to that. And that's why it's important. Did they have an agreement? Well, if they were a party to it, they may have the ability to be involved in the agreement some way. But now they're showing these guys are interlopers. They're interfering. They're intermeddling. An unnamed co-conspirator owed Benchmade a fiduciary duty of loyalty while he was employed at Benchmade. MKC was aware of the non-compete clause in the agreement and was specifically aware of the 2-year prohibition. And then within the territory, I love how it says within the territory. Why don't you just say the world, the global ban on the global non-compete ban? There's a reason why they don't say that, because it sounds fucking insane when you say global non-compete ban. And they further knew this clause prohibited conspirator from working for MKC. They say MKC knew or reasonably ought to have known that any breach would cause Benchmark to suffer irreparable harm and loss. And they say by permitting and encouraging or ratifying, and guys, ratifying doesn't mean they signed a document. Ratifying means you encouraged it, you're supporting it, you're condoning it. That's what ratification means. It doesn't mean just signing a document. But they basically egged him on and supported him to breach his obligations by agreeing to hire him to work for MKC only after 1 year. And they intentionally interfered with the contractual relations with the unnamed co-conspirator. They say upon information and belief, hold on here. Upon information and belief, MKC interfered with the purpose of obtaining Benchmade's confidential information. Excuse me. And that was protected by the confidentiality agreement. And they say MKC also interfered with improper means, specifically conspired with the co-conspirator to breach his fiduciary duty of loyalty in order to interfere with his agreement. Because of this interference, Benchmade's contractual relations has suffered and will continue to suffer irreparable harm and money damages. Now, remember, they don't have to explicitly state what those are yet. They don't have to come out with, here's what we're going to have, here's what we've lost, here's what we'll continue to lose. They don't have to show that yet. But as the case would progress, you're going to have to quantify. They also argue MKC's actions have been willful and malicious, entitling an award of punitive damages. Now, Job Well Done says it sounds like RICO. Yeah, remember, RICO is at the end of the day a conspiracy charge, but remember, this is not a interfering with contractual relations, is not a RICO predicate. So this is not a RICO in that way. This is actually properly pled if Company B cooperates employee of Company A and they both conspire, meaning they agree and work it out that they're going to fuck over Company A. That's a conspiracy, and that's a conspiracy to interfere with contractual relations. That's not illegal. That's not improper. That's not a lol cow argument. Sometimes that is a valid argument to make. It just depends on what you're doing. So no, this really isn't a RICO. Now, the second claim is civil conspiracy. And the co-conspirator owed Benchmade a duty of loyalty. And that required him to refrain from entering agreements while he was an employee of Benchmade. Nonetheless, they entered into a conspiracy to cause the conspirator to tortiously breach his fiduciary duty of loyalty. Specifically, while he was an employee of Benchmade, MKC and this guy entered into a scheme to have the conspirator work for MKC with an only 1 year departure. The non-compete portion of the agreement is used to help ensure the confidential information will not be transferred or used by competitors. And this scheme created a high risk of disclosure of Benchmark's confidential information. And they say each MKC and the co-conspirator took at least one step in furtherance of the conspiracy. And that's the thing, chat. Having conspiracy itself is not a problem. It's a conspiracy plus. So not only did you come up with an agreement, did they work together? Did you take steps to further the conspiracy? So it's one thing to plot to kill someone. Okay. But you plot to kill that person. Then you're out in front of their house. You've got a loaded gun. You've got a map of their house in your hands. You've got a place where you're going to bury them. You've got rope and lime and all that stuff set up. Hold on here, chat. No, it's not a shower text. Yeah, hold on 1 second. Whoa, chat. Apparently Jay-Z just got accused of sexually assaulting a 13-year-old along with Diddy. So, you know how people were saying that this is going to unravel the rap game? Yeah, it's happening. So there you go. Now, Sula, you bring up a very good comment here about some of this stuff. And this is something I do want to address. You brought up John Browning. Now, see, here's the thing. John Browning had to leave America at the end because he had non-competes. And he had rules where he couldn't interfere with patents. So that's why John Browning, at the end of his career, and as an old man, he had to work for Fabrique Nationale in Belgium. He had already been restricted by law and by agreement from operating in the United States for companies. So he had to go to FN, and then he had to make the high power. And he had to invent the high power by getting around all the patents and all the other guns he had ever designed. So that's a thing that happens. It can happen at times. But that's why sometimes, that's why John Browning was in belt. That's why John Browning worked for FN when he was dead at the very end. And that's why he was inventing the high power. And the high power is so different in design from the 1911. It's got similarities, but there's reasons why it's different. Okay? Um, you also have a Benchmade on me right now. I'm a fancy boy. Yeah. Yes, John Browning didn't initially go to Belgium. He waffled. I understand, but eventually there's a reason why John Browning is working in Belgium for Fabrique Nationale, because he couldn't fucking work anywhere else. That's a problem. That's the issue. Kind of same. Yep, Eugene Stoner is the exact same way. Eugene Stoner. There's a reason why when he had developed the AR-18, Eugene Stoner made the AR-15. He's the father of that. But he also then had to make the AR-18. The AR-18 is a completely different design than the AR-15. Completely different in almost every way, because he had to work around the patents that Armalite had sold off to Colt. When Armalite sold the AR-15 off to Colt to manufacture and became the M16 and all that, well, Colt owned all the patents and all the information, and they said, fuck you, you're not making a gun like this. So Eugene Stoner had to sit there and write it all out and design a completely new fucking gun. It's not uncommon at all. It's not uncommon at all. The AR-18 is barely legal. Well, it's better than the 15. Yes. Oh, Marine X, you're saying great content. Well, thank you. Yes, we're going to get to what happens from here because it is very interesting, and it's not clear, but I think some things happened, and I have some theories on that. And yeah, Montana Knife Company sent 2 letters to Benchmade to resolve this, and they ignored them. Yeah, and then Montana filed sanctions. Oh, and you interviewed Tim Parlator, an MKC owner. Oh, you did? Cool. Well, thank you. I appreciate you stopping by. But yeah, I'll have to look for that interview. So thank you for stopping in here. Yeah, Fatty Caddy, these guys, this all just got sorted out. The court just ruled on it, but we're gonna get to that in a minute. We still have to get through the whole complaint. Oh. Yes, Sula. Yes, all Mikhail Kalashnikov got was a bunch of vodka for the most copied design ever, but that's a little different. So anyway, they keep going here from this. So the online co-conspirator then gave Benchmade the notice of his intention to do so, which once again, that is such a that's don't do that, guys. Like, do your thing. Now, as a direct approximate result of the conduct, Benchmade has sustained actual damages and will continue to accrue sustain such damage in the future on an ongoing basis. The direct approximate result of the conduct, Benchmade has suffered irreparable harm, and they point out MKC has been willful and malicious. And that means Benchmade could get punitive damages. Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Yeah. Oh, you're going to interview the MKC owner again tonight to determine what they will do. Okay. Well, yeah, that's awesome here. Awesome. So, and anyways, their prayer for relief, they want preliminary and permanent injunctive relief prohibiting NKC from employing, otherwise retaining the conspirator within 2 years of the last date of employment at Benchmade. Economic and non-economic damages, and punitive damages, and all other relief. And this is what Benchmade wants. Now, somebody asked earlier here, and it was, where is it? Kimbo says, what's the court going to do? Can they force MKC to fire the person? Yes, that is an option. Let's just, I'm not saying this happened. We're going to change it to Coke and Pepsi. We'll change this to Coke and Pepsi. If you worked for Coca-Cola and you agreed for 2 years not to compete against Coca-Cola and you start working for Pepsi, Yes, Pepsi could go to court and say, Your Honor, we demand that he stops working there and they sever all business ties for the 2-year period. The court could say, Yep, I agree. This is what the agreement says. You guys can't work together anymore. That is a thing, guys. And that is, you may not like it, but that's a very libertarian thing at the end of the day. You agreed, in exchange for money and services and whatever it is you did as part of your agreement, the idea is that's the contract you made. You made a contract and you agreed to it. You pay me money, I agree not to go do stuff for that guy. Now, obviously, this Benchmade wasn't saying because it's the entire world. But let's just say it's Coke and Pepsi and they're two companies competing in the same town. Well, yeah, you shouldn't just be able to go across the street right away. If you want to go to the next town over and work for, Fanta, fine. That would be okay. That would be a reasonable non-compete. But you can't work for another competitor in town. So at some point, there's not a problem with having a non-compete. But yes, they can fire you. They could say you can't work together anymore, which means, yeah, you could be fired as part of that compliance. Now, here's the thing with Benchmade, though. A worldwide, like the entire world, you can't go, like, you could maybe sell knives in Antarctica. You're going to make the Penguin Knife Company. That's the only way you can compete is in Antarctica, Sealand, like that guy who owns the Flak Tower out in the middle of the English Channel. And then maybe like Iran and North Korea. Those are the places you could work. And maybe Burma, because Burma, I think, is sanctioned a lot of ways too. Yeah, you're going to have to be... Oh, yeah. It's a bit of an issue. It's a bit of an issue. Okay. I understand Coke and Pepsi and Fanta are all like, I'm trying to say like different companies. Like you work for company Coca-Cola, company Pepsi. I'm using different names because I don't want to import things to this company or that company here. But you guys get the point. A reasonable and well-defined and well-tailored non-compete makes sense. But just saying nowhere, everywhere is our country, everywhere is our territory. Like, no, that's not going to work. That's insane. That is ridiculous. Fatty Caddy, hold on here, chat. All right. Fatty Caddy says Benchmade makes one good design every 5 years, and the butterfly tax funds it in the interim. I'm not going to say that about them. Like, they make a lot of knives. I'm not like, ooh, I want one. I grew up with Kershaw's. Like, I got one as a kid, and I'm like, ooh, these Kershaw's are fucking sweet. So I've used those a lot. I've used, I've had other knife brands throughout the years, but like, I'm a big Kershaw guy. But yeah, I had a Benchmade Griptilian for a while, but I was like, it's okay. It was a gift. It was a birthday gift, so that helped. But I didn't buy it. But Benchmade's pretty good overall. Thank you, Fatty Caddy. Does that make you feel better? Right now, I don't own, and here in chat, I will say in full disclosure right now, I don't own either of them. The only knives I own right now are some shitty $10 gas station knives. And that's, like I said, because for a very long time, when I would have to do work and stuff, I was really brutal on them. And then, as the story I've told before, I had to go to a courthouse once, and I was in street clothes to go file something, and I forgot I had a knife on me, and I left it in a flower box, and by the time I came out, somebody had found it and stole it. So I don't want to, I'm not going to take a Griptilian or something nice from MKC and then have some asshole steal it. So no, I don't carry expensive knives because I don't want to lose them. But yeah, as I should say in full disclosure, chat, I have no interest in either company, and I don't own any knives from either company right now. I owned a Griptilian many years ago, but that was like 10 years ago now, actually 15 years ago now. So I have no, well, MKC didn't exist 15 years ago, but you get the point. I have no dog in the fight. I have no dog in the fight. So what happened from here? Well, there was an interesting, well, it's not really interesting, but we had a thing that got filed. And this came out in April. In April, we ended up with this. Under the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure 41A. And if you guys look up your own state's dismissal rules, voluntary dismissal, this will probably have happened. And you'll find them this way. Betty K says, how do I charge back? I cannot abide this. What? I only see what Benchmade's doing. I don't own Benchmades. I said that. I answered you. I'm a shill for Big Knife. I'm on the payroll. Yes. I actually, chat, that's the thing. I'm a Cutco company, man. I'm a Cutco. No. Gary says a lot of things have been in April. Oh, God. So, anyway, this is a notice, plaintiff's notice of voluntary dismissal. And you're allowed to voluntarily dismiss a case. The first time in a civil situation, just like a criminal case, you get to voluntarily dismiss once. The second time is generally going to be with prejudice, and you're completely done. You get 2 bites of the apple. And this is all it takes. This is all it takes to file a motion to dismiss, chat. You say, pursuant to Rule 41, you hereby dismiss this action without prejudice. Ta-da! Done. Bum, 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 bum. Now, this is filed April 8th. Well, what happened in the meantime? Now, I don't know if this had a play in it, but it might have. It might have. This is from the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC. And the FTC, back in April of 2023, and this is where a lot of people, I've heard this theory from people, and I don't know if that's the case, because April 2023, they announced new rules banning non-competes. So they did. The FTC said, we want to put together a rule banning non-competition agreements. Now, here's the issue, though, and this is something I think you guys need to know. On August 20th, a district court issued an order enjoining the FTC from enforcing the rule set to go into effect September 4th. The FTC has appealed that decision. The district court's decision does not prevent the FTC from addressing non-competes, though on a case-by-case enforcement action. And that's true. So right now, this nationwide prohibition is done. So for now, it's actually not into effect. Matt is saying, does this ban existing or only future non-competes? It means all of them. The FTC was going to strike them and say it's illegal. So that would be any non-competes, including ones in existence, but also banning future ones. Well, at that point, the whatever district court was involved said, nope, you're not doing that, FTC. I am restricting your governmental action. It's been enjoined, and now it's in the Court of Appeals. So the FTC has been enjoined from doing anything about it, and it has not been resolved yet. So right now, the banning of non-competes is not in effect. Did the FTC ever follow through? Yeah, well, they're in the appeal process. So right now they're appealing it, as they say right down here. We're appealing the decision. So right now they're appealing the decision, and they're going to try to figure out what they can do. But for right now, it has not been ruled upon. So with this, so I don't think that was the case. I don't think that was the case here. I don't think that's going to be the case here. But in the meantime, Benchmade came out swinging, and you're going to see why here. And Benchmade was like, oh, no. Oh, no, no, no. We're not over. It's not over that easy. Montana Knife Company's like, no, buddy. Nope. The defendant's motion for sanctions. They're like, you're not out of this yet, man. We got some shit to settle. We got some shit to settle, chat. So, defendant Montana Knife Company certifies that it's sufficiently attempted to confer with plaintiff's counsel by sending multiple letters and conferring on the telephone multiple times. As discussed more fully, defendant made multiple attempts to resolve the issue, but without success. First, they sent plaintiff's counsel a letter discussing this exact motion. Then, as counsel for the plaintiff had not responded to any communications by the defendant, nor had initiated any communications before filing the suit, the defendant sent an initial draft of the motion asking plaintiff to discuss. After sending the draft, counsel did confer on May 21st and again on May 24th, but they couldn't resolve the issues in dispute. Thus, they sent in a sanction motion pursuant to local rules. And they say pursuant to federal law, they moved the court for an award of costs and attorney's fees due to the unreasonably and vexatious multiplying these proceedings. In support, they state that the case was filed without a rudimentary inquiry into the facts. The plaintiffs made false and salacious allegations of conspiracy and theft of proprietary information against a competitor, all for the purpose of preventing an unhappy employee from starting employment after his resignation with the plaintiff within the time plaintiff's general counsel had advised. The plaintiff maliciously and frivolously used this filing to intimidate his former employee and force him to breach his new employment agreement with the defendant. And they're saying for this unjustifiable abuse of the legal system, sanctions are warranted. And they say the plaintiff is a 45-year-old knife company that specializes in folding knives. And the defendant, founded in 2020, is a new knife company that specializes in fixed blade knives. And chat, those of you who don't understand the difference, obviously a folding blade knife is a knife where the blade folds into the handle. And a fixed blade knife is a knife where the blade does not move. It's fixed. So, kitchen knives are fixed blade knives. A K-bar is a fixed blade knife. A tactical knife is generally going to be fixed blade. A hunting knife is generally going to be fixed blade. As long as the knife doesn't move, it's fixed blade. Hence the name. So they're arguing we're in a completely different, we're in a different market than you. So the defendant was in negotiations with an employee who was looking to leave his job and work for the defendant. Careful not to run afoul of any contractual obligations the employee had to plaintiff, defendant asked employee to check on the status of any applicable non-competes. The employee spoke with plaintiff's general counsel, who informed him that non-competes are only enforceable for a 1-year period in Oregon, including his own non-compete. Now, that's a bit of an issue. It's one thing, he obviously signed paperwork, but it sounds like, and this is the allegation, the employee said, I spoke with general counsel. So plaintiff's general counsel, Benchmade's general counsel, their attorney, who said non-competes are only enforceable for a 1-year period in Oregon, including his own. Now, that's the thing. Many states do have rules on this, that you can have a non-compete can only be for so long, regardless of the scope or what's involved. You might be only limited to a year. Some places, I think it's only 6 months. So, yeah, that's a bit of an issue here. If this really happened as alleged, oh boy. So the defendant then tendered the employee an offer of employment, which acknowledged the employee may have to find alternative employment during the non-compete period. And that's the defendant saying, look, talking to Bob, say, Bob, we'll hire you, but in the meantime, we can't work with you. And it's on you to secure your own employment. You got to secure your own roof over your head. We can't give you any money. We can't compensate you. And we're not just going to give away money for free, but we're also not going to pay you to be a janitor. So, go work at Home Depot for a year or wherever it is you're going to go. When plaintiff learned the employee was leaving an agreement to join the defendant after the non-competes expired, which the employee understood to be a 1-year period, it immediately filed the instant lawsuit without even a cursory investigation or inquiry into the relevant facts. In the lawsuit, plaintiff alleged without investigation there was a civil conspiracy to steal intellectual property, as well as to violate the 2-year non-compete. And there's a footnote. And the footnote says in the complaint, the plaintiff alleged that the employee had signed a 2-year non-compete rather than the 1-year agreement. That plaintiff's general counsel informed him is the maximum permitted under Oregon law. So, and remember, since they live in Oregon and the business is in Oregon and that agreement was executed in Oregon, Oregon law is going to control. And then here's the thing. Let's say you had a 2-year, let's say you were in the state of Washington as a company. And let's say hypothetically Washington allowed for a 2-year. Cool. And then you're in Washington and, you're running your knife company. You're like, you know what? I want to move across the river into Oregon. So you load up and you move across the river, move across the state line. You move to Oregon. And Oregon says now only 1 year. Guess what? You're only limited now at a 1 year. You can't say, well, Washington said we could do that. No. If your state law is out there and limits you, guess what? You're limited. Moreover, even though plaintiff declined to include the alleged agreement as an exhibit, the extensive quotes contained indicate this agreement is overbroad and void as a matter of law. And I agree. Once again, chat, you cannot say the entire world you're making fucking knives. Yes, you can cross state lines. Angela says, Real Housewives are on right now. Really? I'm losing to them? Come on. Oh, hold on. Angela 2.0 wants to know which Real Housewives is on right now. Jesus Christ. So, plaintiff's counsel made no effort to send a demand letter, or engage in any communications regarding the matter prior to filing the lawsuit. The process server caught the defendant completely off guard. Now, you don't normally have to go ahead. You don't have to try to resolve things prior. But it's generally not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea. It's, number one, it could save money. Because you might find out, hey, Benchmade could have sent a letter over to MKC and been like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? And MKC can go, hey, bro, look, you think you got this, but you got it all wrong. And then Benchmade could have been like, oh, okay, cool. And then it just cost a letter and maybe a phone call, not going through all this shit. Because this cost a lot more money. Let's see here. Hold on. Where's So anyways, shortly thereafter, plaintiff and their counsel pulled the employee into a room, and Mr. Aldrich threatened to personally name him as a defendant in the lawsuit if he did not immediately sign a settlement agreement in which he agreed to breach his employment agreement with the defendant and sign a new illegal 4-year non-compete solely and specifically naming the defendant. Now, here's the thing, chat. That's a very specific allegation. They probably are very specific for a reason. They probably know something that they know something we don't know. And holy shit, this is chat. If you're running a business, do not do this. Don't do it this way. Don't do it this way. All right. I say, although the employee did not agree to this illegal and extortionate demand, plaintiff is still trying to force the employee to agree to a non-compete period that is in violation of Oregon law and would consequently force the employee to breach his employment agreement with the defendant and began working after a 1-year hiatus. Yeah, so remember, chat, if you are a plaintiff in a case, you cannot cause harm yourself. You run into the issues of unclean hands, that you run into the issue of you being countersued for breaking, all MKC, because they can say, no, it is you who is breaking and interfering with a business contract. They can throw out the reversal card. Then go, no, bitch, it is you. It is you who's doing it wrong. Oh. Defense counsel sent a letter on March 27th outlining the fatal flaws in the complaint, demanding it to be immediately dismissed. Plaintiff's counsel never acknowledged this letter or engaged in any communication. Instead, they waited 2 weeks and dismissed the complaint the day before the defendant responsive pleading was due. While this could have been easily mitigated through simple communication, plaintiff's intentional decision to ignore communication attempts and delay the dismissal forced the defendant to expend funds to prepare the responsive pleading, which became moot. During and after communications with counsel for the plaintiff, Mr. Aldrich provided no factual response that would controvert the basis of this motion, other than an improper missive that he knows the judge. Well, that's attorneys have done that before. They're like, bro, listen, brother, you're coming into my neck of the woods, and Judge and me were friends. We golf together. That's not uncommon. That's my comment. So they say, Aldrich separately attempted to claim the draft motion contained attorney-client privilege information, referring to the passage where the employee asked plaintiff's general counsel how long his non-compete was. That is not attorney-client privilege. The plaintiff's general counsel is attorney for the company. He is not the attorney for the employee at all. His loyalty is to Benchmade, not the employee, so it's not attorney-client privilege information. Now, Aldrich claimed that since there was no certification from the employee, he would file a motion to strike to come as privileged. He said the next morning, the general counsel emailed counsel for the employee, threatening it would be a breach of the non-compete for his client to consult with defendant on this litigation. Though this was clearly a false statement, it had the desired unlawful effect of intimidating the witness into declining to sign a declaration. And that means that MKC was going to have him sign a declaration saying, my name's Bob Boberson. Here's what Benchmade did to me that was really fucked up. However, his counsel did say if subpoenaed to testify, he would testify truthfully. Yes. Loyalty, bitch. Now, 28 USC 1927. Anybody who multiplies the proceedings in any case unreasonably and vexatiously may be required by the court to satisfy personally the excess costs, expenses, and attorney's fees reasonably incurred because of the conduct. Sanctions must be supported by subjective bad faith. Bad faith is present when an attorney knowingly or recklessly raises a frivolous argument or argues a meritorious claim for the purpose of harassing an opponent. So there we go. And what did they do here? The lawsuit was recklessly brought without rudimentary investigation. It sounds like it. Perhaps the starkest indicator of this is that plaintiff made no effort to speak with the employee until several days after the complaint was filed. Plaintiff filed its claims regarding the non-compete without performing any research info into the enforceability of either the time or geographic scope, and the claims regarding proprietary information are pure fiction. The complaint is rife with conclusory allegations and void of supporting facts. I don't know if it's rife, but it's got a couple. But it's a complaint. It's not going to, that's just kind of the name of the game there. That's just nature of the business. In this case, plaintiff prioritized speed over accuracy. The plaintiff recklessly raised these arguments in an attempt to harass the employee by threatening to include the employee in an attempt to have him sign an illegal non-compete. The plaintiff noticeably declined to begin the legal process with the cease and desist demand, which is why you normally see those, because it's always easier to start that way. Or to accompany their complaint with an application for an injunction. And additionally, if they believed the employee was going to transfer proprietary information, it would have filed an injunction, and it should have. If you think your employee is going to go ahead and do this, you should go out there and file an injunction stopping him from working. It's stopping him from disclosing the data. Kimbo, like you were asking, yes, you would say, stop this guy from working there. And they can do that at times. So they say the non-compete is facially invalid. And they argue that the alleged non-compete is invalid on multiple bases, including because of Oregon state law. And it says that a term of non-competition may not exceed 12 months from the date of the employee's termination. The remainder of a term in excess is void and may not be enforced by a court of this state. Meaning, if it's more than that, too bad. Now, there might be other states where it is enforceable. So if you sign that non-compete here in Oregon, but you go to, other states may allow you to do stuff, but not here. So Mr. Aldrich's efforts to intimidate the employee into a 4-year non-compete is even more incomprehensible, indicative of bad faith. Yeah. So if you know that the law only limits to 12 months, but you ask for 48 month, like, whew. And he says further, the restricted period in the current agreement of 2 years, even though at the time was legal, and that's the thing, chat. The law changed in Oregon, so it's unlikely to be enforced as a reasonable restriction. And they say, aside from the unenforceable non-compete period, the restrictions in the agreement are also geographically overbroad. And yes, it's outlined in the complaint. The alleged non-compete defines the territory as literally the entire world. So what do you do? Well, when you have an unreasonably broad provision, the court may enforce the covenant to the extent it is reasonable. And if it's too overbroad and you can reasonably alter it, the court shall do so unless it determines the covenant was not drafted in good faith. When the geographic restriction is unreasonable, the court could sever the contract and carve out a reasonable geographic area in which the contract would be enforced. And that's the thing. And somebody asked earlier, well, why wouldn't you just risk it? Well, the court may, here's the thing. The court may you might end up getting punished. So instead of saying banning you from working in the state of Oregon with another competitor, the court may, and you chose the entire world, the court may just limit you to your county, your city. Who knows? But remember, pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. If you have too broad of one, when the court trims it back, reasonable now is up to the judge. And as long as it's not an abuse of discretion, the judge might say, okay, fine, it's only in the state of Oregon. Instead of, if you had not been greedy, you could have said like a 300-mile radius. And that might have been reasonable. But instead, you're a dickhead and you got greedy. Well, now instead of your 300-mile radius, which the court may have said, fair enough, you've now fucked it up, and you're now, the guy's already leaving your state anyway to go to Montana, so now you're fucked. Danny says, the court rewriting contracts, that's what happens when you fuck up. If your contract is garbage, the court has to fix it. And this is the same thing with mediation or arbitration. It's better you come up with an agreement on your own than you make a third party do it. Because if a third party does it, you're probably not going to like it. So it's got to be done in good faith and in accordance with the reasonable standards of fair dealing. They say if this case would have continued, the court would have found this provision to be overly broad. It is. They point out that the employee's new employment with defendant would have been over 500 miles from his prior employment with plaintiff. You notice, guys, like I said, 300 miles. You could have done probably 500 miles. Who knows? But you pick something that's reasonable. You don't just go, oh, well, fuck it. Nobody's going to challenge us because somebody did. This guy did it, and now you're looking like an idiot. Yamal says, could U.S. and EU markets be more reasonable? No, that's probably too restrictive. Here's the problem. Now you're at, in a nationwide ban. No. 10KV says, void it or rewrite it. Well, here's the problem. If you're the defendant, you're now having to waste more time and money negotiating a contract out with a party. No, they've already had their like. If I'm the defendant, no, fuck that. We've already had our chance. You know what, Judge? They fucked up. We want you to fix it. Now, sometimes the defendant goes, no, I don't want that one either. It's still better than it was before, but that's kind of the give and the take. They say bringing a lawsuit to enforce a clearly unenforceable non-compete, both in time and scope, is unmistakably evidence of bad faith, which warrants a sanction. Now they talk about abusing the legal process and unlawfully interfering with the defendant's relationship. They say the most damning evidence of bad faith is the plaintiff's conduct outside the court proceedings, the attempts to intimidate, and they say first the attempt to force the 4-year non-compete, the outrageous non-compete. Say I had a law professor who did that. He'd say when it got to outrageous and somebody read it, he'd say no, you have to really put effort behind it. That it was outrageous. And through its continued efforts to get the employee to agree to an illegally excessive term, which, yeah, it is very illegal, the efforts, we believe, continue to this day. The plaintiff never had a legitimate claim for the court to vindicate, and the plaintiff abused the legal process to gain a negotiating advantage. So because of that, they want sanctions, and this is from the Parlator Law Group, and they did this May 3rd. So you're like, uh-oh. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. If you're Benchmade, you're like, uh-oh. Uh-oh. Yeah, that's not good. That's not good. Now, what happens here? Well, Benchmade did a response, chat. And Benchmade came through and they said, well, we have a response in opposition to the sanctions motion. And they're allowed to respond. They have the right to respond. So Benchmade, gets ready to they do their thing. So it's their response in opposition to the sanctions. So they start off, and we go through all of this here. And they say Benchmade's complaint was well pleaded and based on a thorough investigation and proper application of the law. And they say ultimately the former employee at the heart of the case agreed to abide by the terms of contractual obligations of Benchmade, obviating any need for litigation. And they said Benchmade then voluntarily dismissed because there's nothing else to do. Now, they say the swift resolution in this case is the opposite of what MKC wanted, and their motion should be denied. Now, you see there's stuff that's been redacted here, chat. And they say, Mr. Blank. His name is provided here in a request of completeness, but this brief is being filed under seal, meaning that this has been submitted to the court as an unredacted document. Benchmade requests his court omit his name from any opinion. And they say the industry, they talk about all the stuff. Benchmade's very important. Until recently, this guy was Benchmade's director of manufacturing innovation, which you could very well figure out who the hell this is. Concurrent with his employment starting in 2015, he executed the non-compete. And that's the other thing, chat. This isn't just the guy mopping the floors. This is a higher up guy. So him having a non-compete makes sense. If this was the janitor, no, you wouldn't want to have him a non-compete. Or if it's a lady who worked in the cafeteria, and I understand they don't have cafeterias anymore, companies, but the guy who was in charge of, the lady who ran the cafeteria, or the guy who pushed the mail cart around, those guys having non-competes would be stupid. But having somebody who's the director of your manufacturing, yeah, you could argue you can't work for any business within 300 miles of us. That would be a pretty reasonable restriction. So they say the territory is broadly defined to be broadly nationwide. Is defined to broadly be nationwide. You forget the rest of the world. You forget the rest of the world there, buddy. Even then, nationwide is a bit much. That's a bit much. So, and they talk about indirectly in the competitive business activity. And they say, accordingly, Mr. Blank, watch what we Blank Simpsons. Hello, my name is Mr. Black. Mr. Black is prohibited from working for a competitor until 2 years after his employment ended with Benchmade. They say under the headings of proprietary rights and information, the agreement also prohibited Mr. Black from disclosing or reproducing or duplicating any Benchmade knife confidential information without written consent of an officer of the company. Price Gooby says, I'm going to go make knives on the moon. Pretty much. So Mr. Black indicated his intention to take actions contrary to his non-compete agreement. In late February, Mr. Black gave notice to his direct supervisor that he would be terminating his employment with Benchmade. Now, granted, he's the director of manufacturing. He probably is somebody in the C-suite. He probably reports to or some sort of vice president or some guy. It's like I said, he's not the janitor, so he's not just some random Yahoo. They say in subsequent discussions, he also disclosed that he had reached an agreement with MKC to take employment 1 year after his termination date at Benchmade, notwithstanding his 2-year non-compete agreement. He explained he intended to work for a different company outside the knife industry for that 1 year period. And he told Benchmade that he was advised that non-competition agreements in Oregon are valid for only 1 year. Now they do say that this they allege without support the employee spoke with general counsel who said that it was only enforceable for the 1 year period. Had the case been litigated, the accuracy of that allegation would have been contested. So you got both these companies saying, that's not true. So we'd see who's telling the truth in trial or in deposition. So they say, indeed, pursuant to the version of the Oregon statute in effect as of 2024, the term of the non-compete may not exceed 12 months from the date of the employee's termination. They say, however, at the time that Mr. Black signed his agreement, the statute allowed for non-competes up to 2 years. So in 2021, Oregon passed Senate Bill 169, which limited the terms to 12 months. However, Section 2 of the Act also stated the amendments to this apply to only non-competes that are entered into or after the effective date of this 2021 Act. So, accordingly, Mr. Black's confidentiality agreement limiting him was unaffected by the Senate bill and the 12-month restriction. They say Mr. Black agreement to take employment with MKC, a competitor in the knife industry, in only 1 year was a facial violation of his contractual obligations. They do talk about that they did do a reasonable investigation beforehand. So, and they point out the attorneys diligently investigated the facts surrounding Mr. Black's notice. The council had a Teams video call with Benchmade's general counsel and VPs in March. Council had follow-up calls on the 8th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th. And during part of the investigation, council interviewed a number of additional employees, including Mr. Black, direct supervisor and Benchmade CEO. Mr. Black's supervisor provided a comprehensive narrative of the conversations in which Mr. Black explained his plans with respect to MKC. And then meanwhile, because he was leaving to work for a competitor, the IT team conducted an internal investigation of his email, which your employer can do that. They will investigate. And in the process, they discovered that leading up to his apparent employment, he had on numerous occasions emailed highly confidential documents and trade secrets to his personal email address. A not uncommon thing. A not uncommon thing. Now, some of you might say, oh, you know what? Instead of that, I'll just click print. Any decent company's IT will be able to say you clicked print. So on their computers. So they say these documents included confidential information about the employees' anticipated capital improvement plans, expansion plans, including maps, architectural drawings of Benchmade facilities, revenue goals, operational goals, expected margins, flow charts showing the manufacturing process, considerations for altering the process, how much it was going to cost, Benchmade's future outlook, and forward-looking 2-year planning, using infrastructure planning and capital expenditures. So, Matt's just saying that a decent IT department would have no idea what you did with that print. Yes, but if you printed all this shit out right here, and they would know, apparently, like, they would have to figure out what you did with it. And if you don't have a good answer, you're like, oh, I just printed it and then I took it home. Benchmade could say, bring it back. You can't just go, oh, I hit print and I don't know what happened. You can't do that. Yeah, like they're gonna know you printed it, chat. So I'm just saying, if you're thinking you could, oh, I'll just print it, they'll know. These documents to share with a competitor could potentially be used to fairly compete with Benchmade. Well, okay, yeah, but has it happened? Many of these proprietary documents were stamped confidential. That's always a problem there. So they also did more research of Mr. Black's emails and found that as far back as his email files were retained, Mr. Black had never sent confidential information to his personal email account. Nor is there a legitimate reason for him to do so. Mr. Black had the ability to access company systems from home via a VPN. So now you guys, some of you guys are trying to get out there and be, well, actually, now you've got a problem. Now you've got a problem. Because now you haven't done this routinely. And Benjamin says just put it on a USB. In companies like this, if you pull this out, they'll know you inserted it. And as somebody indicated, depending on what type of industry you're in, sometimes the computer's locked down when unauthorized USBs connect. So KJ says take a picture of your screen. That would be a way to fix that. Unless there's cameras watching. But yeah, they can tell if you insert USBs. And Kid Patrick says a big company would have a print server. They may not know what you did, but they know you printed it. Yeah. And they'll know you printed out like 1,000 pages like a month before you quit. And it's going to be pretty fucking obvious what you did. So the undersigned counsel spoke with the 2 IT engineers who performed this investigative work and was supplied with the copies of the email and underlying attachments. Benchmade filed suit and immediately dismissed it after the relevant harm had been ameliorated. Ameliorated, chat. It got removed. So they said Benchmade alleges as follows that Benchmade had a valid contract with Mr. Black, and that MKC was not a party to it. Yep. They say Mr. Black. And they go through reiterating things here. So Benchmade was concerned about the permanent reputational damage that could befall Mr. Black from these allegations. So they said accordingly, it avoided naming him as a defendant. Well, I think that was an attempt to threaten him and blackmail him personally, but what do I know? I mean, if this guy was going to fuck your company over, well, we don't want to damage his reputation. This guy tried to fuck you. I mean, if this guy tried to snake you and you're like, it's okay, bro, we're going to be bros. It's like, no. If he tried to snake you, you fucking call him out. John says, what episode was the Mr. Black one? So I love it. The Camp Krusty one. So it's all. This is a problem here. You know, we don't want to hurt this guy. We don't want to be mean to him, but he was going to fuck us over. Like, what? What the fuck? Why? Why would you do this then? Accordingly, it named avoid. Well, I think the reason why they didn't want to do it is because it's embarrassing to Benchmade if your director of manufacturing innovation, a really fucking high up guy, was defecting from the company. It would have been really fucking embarrassing. You know, you would have left it out. It could have been some low level engineer, but instead, you know, you were trying to be quiet about it. So, accordingly, it avoided naming him as a defendant and also avoided using his name or title in the complaint, instead referring to him as the unnamed conspirator. However, Benchmade executives separately confronted Mr. Black with its findings in a meeting that took place in March of 2024. At that meeting, Benchmade presented Mr. Black with a draft amended complaint that further named him as a defendant, detailed the emails he had forwarded himself, and added the claims against him for misappropriation of trade secrets under the Defend Trade Secrets Act, violation of the Oregon Uniform Trade Secrets Act, breach of contract, and breach of duty of loyalty. Basically, they were going to accuse him of committing industrial espionage, which is a federal fucking crime. Industrial espionage, people go to fucking prison for all the fucking time. It is a real fucking thing. So they were threatening him. If you guys understand what that means, that's what that is. This cutting edge legal work. Oh. So the Benchmade executives concluded by making Mr. Black an offer. The key terms included Mr. Black returned all confidential information, provide complete disclosure to Benchmade so Benchmade can remedy any misappropriation, and agree to abide by his 2-year non-compete agreement. And they say, additionally, given the nature of the highly confidential documents he had forwarded to himself, the offer included that Mr. Black would not work for MKC for 4 years. In exchange for all those terms, Benchmade would provide Mr. Black a complete release of all past conduct and would not file the amended complaint. Benchmade gave Mr. Black 48 hours to respond. Now, you're saying, oh, well, did he get paid? Somebody asked earlier, did he get paid a severance? No, they said, we promise not to sue you. And he got a written promise not to sue, which is binding. But he got released from the complaint. That's all you get. So, undersigned counsel was contacted by an attorney who had been retained by Mr. Black. The attorney requested an extension of time to respond, which Benchmade granted. So Mr. Black and his attorney then negotiated the terms of a settlement agreement over a period of weeks. Ultimately, Mr. Black agreed to return all the Benchmade property to allow forensic analysis of his electronic equipment. Now, that is, some of you might say, well, what do you mean? Like, he gave them his cell phone, he gave them his computers, and they were allowed to examine it for any data they thought was necessary. To provide an interview to Benchmade's counsel and to abide by his 2-year non-compete. He did not agree to the 4-year restriction, and the final settlement does not include that term. Benchmade provided Mr. Black with a release while reserving the right to take additional action against both him as necessary. The settlement with Mr. Black effectively mooted the case. Because he agreed not to work for MKC for 2 years, it ameliorated the harm underlying the complaint. Accordingly, once the basic terms with Mr. Black were reached, Benchmade dismissed the case. As of that time, no responsive pleading had been filed as none was due yet. Now, yes, but out of courtesy, you might want to save your opposing party time. And man, if you'd done like 2 weeks earlier, hey, buddy, don't worry about it, we're dismissing, you save the other party money. Other than the filing documents, the only docket entries were notices of appearance by attorneys. And they say, after the complaint was dismissed, the MKC's New York City-based attorney from New York City threatened to file a motion seeking sanctions. Specifically on Hitler's birthday, he sent a draft for sanctions and stated he intended to file it on Monday and asked to meet and confer in advance. And they say, moreover, many of the factual allegations were plainly false. For example, contrary to the unsupported allegation, plaintiff filed the incident lawsuit without an investigation. They had actually done it. They say that plaintiff made no effort to speak with an employee until several days afterwards, and they're saying, that's not true. And the draft motion stated a 1-year agreement is the maximum permitted under Oregon law, which they're arguing it's not. And they say, as explained above, Benchmade gave Mr. Black 48 hours to suggested he retain an attorney, which he did. The draft also suggests Benchmade requested a 4-year restriction, specifically taking employment with MKC was illegal. And this is something they make an argument here. This is an interesting argument they're making here. The Oregon statute limiting employment non-competition agreements does not apply to the requested term in exchange for releasing liability claims. Now, they're citing parts of the statute, and that could be an option. It's not only a non-competition agreement, it's part of a compensation. There's give and take now. In any case, Benchmade agreed to withdraw in terms of that light of other compromises. In terms of his legal analysis, the argument section said nothing about the statute, and MKC referenced only 1927 once. And they said that reversed a fee award under that statute. So the draft motion referenced 2 letters that Mr. Parlator sent, each of which made false and wholly unsupported accusations. Notwithstanding the short notice, the undersigned did agree to meet and confer with Parlator on a Sunday afternoon, which they did. Parlator asked to meet and confer again on Wednesday, April 24th. And they said, without notifying the undersigned counsel or seeking consent, Parlator now admitted that he recorded that conversation using an AI note-taking software to take down nearly verbatim quotes. He did that without consent. Oof. Gotta be careful with that shit, chat. Gotta be careful. During that conversation, undersigned counsel explained to Parlator that given the deficiencies, the draft motion was meritless. Counsel also explained he did not expect such a base motion to be favorably looked upon by this court, and respectfully suggested MKC not file it. Now, they're arguing, I didn't tell you I know the judge. He's like, I'm telling you I've been in front of this judge, and he won't like what you're going to do. Now, they also argue that this whole thing about pulling the employee and threatening to make him name him as a defendant. They say to the contrary, general counsel was not there and has never seen him nor spoken with him. This accusation was nothing more than conjecture. They say, this is all bullshit here. They say, the motion is still devoid of supporting evidence. And they're saying in a declaration submitted, but it's unsigned and is not referenced in the motion. And to his own unsigned declaration, Parlator attached a redacted declaration apparently drafted for Mr. Black to sign. But it too was unsigned. If it's not signed, it's not worth shit. Moreover, there's a number of false statements in it. And it says, and a lengthy paragraph detailing statement of Mr. Aldridge made during that conversation, and Mr. Black reaction to those. And they say it was drafted by somebody lacking personal knowledge rather than by Mr. Black, given the statements were never occurred. So, and they also point out here the burden of establishing entitlement to attorney's fees award lies solely with the claimant. And they say the motion fails to establish the existence of basic statutory elements. And they say MKC has failed to establish any of the necessary factors under the law. And they say they didn't multiply the proceedings because we dismissed it beforehand. And they say beyond that, MKC cannot prove the elements of unreasonableness or vexatiousness. And they say MKC also faults Benchmade for not filing a preliminary injunction for not multiplying the proceedings. Which, yes, that is a very interesting argument. Well, you guys did multiplying the proceedings, but they didn't do more work. And they say, as demonstrated above, however, such motion practice is unnecessary, given the case is mooted by a separate settlement. And they say the non-compete is valid. Which I don't know. Once again, the global scope is nonsense to me. Stacy says, I'm in a single-party state. Yes. Well, you have to be careful. Be very careful with that, chat. They also state that the restrictions in the agreement are geographically overbroad. They say, however, where corporations operate nationally, Oregon courts routinely enforce nationwide non-competes. Yeah, but you're dealing with like Nike. That's a big one. It depends. But yeah, and also remember, they're relying now on 20-year-old case law, which is not a good thing. If you don't have anything newer, that's not a good sign. So they say MKC also relies on the proposed restriction being unenforceable. The argument is misplaced. They say that based on the 2-year non-complete was then in effect. And then after the complaint, they agreed to offer the settlement. They include a term where he would abide by the existing 2-year agreement, but would also agree not to work for MKC for 4 years in exchange for a release of numerous claims of action, including the trade secrets and the industrial espionage stuff. And they say, accordingly, that term, which is post-dated the relevant events, it was never agreed to, is irrelevant. Okay. And they're saying, you should deny the motion. So this has been an ongoing thing, chat. This has been an ongoing struggle. Um, Now, where did this get us? Well, just this month, the court has come forward and they have now issued an order. This was made at the beginning of November. So this is from the judge, and he's making his order. He's going order in the court. So he talks about the complaint being filed, and then the plaintiff then voluntarily dismissing its lawsuit on April 8th. And then on May 3rd, the motion for sanctions was filed. They point out that defendant's counsel, however, did not sign this motion, nor did he sign his attached declaration. That's a bit of an issue. They say plaintiff noted in his response that counsel had not signed the motion or his declaration. The defendant did not address this defect in his reply. Well, that's once again we're getting to like, well, that's not good. It's not good. Is it bad? Well, it's like Reservoir Dogs. I forgot. We got to get to the reply here, chat. Sorry, shoot. We're gonna get to the reply real quick. I forgot it. We didn't do that. We just did the plaintiff's response. Now, remember, you get the reply, you file a motion that other party replies, and then you finally have a reply there. Now, they go through all of this, and they say, they go through all this here, and we need to get to the argument of what they're arguing with. Now, the plaintiff's motion, the defendant's motion is based on the total lack of any alleged wrongdoing by defendant. And the plaintiff opposition papers confirm this basis. So Nika Aldrich states that the employee informed his direct supervisor in late February. And they say the employee actually informed his supervisor much earlier. They say, however, as a result of this, the actions to intimidate the employee not providing a declaration, the plaintiff must rely on plaintiff's claim here. And they claim that he would leave after 1 year. He'd leave for a year and then go work. The plaintiff never communicated to the employee that the plaintiff disputed the employee's understanding of Oregon law, limiting the length of the non-compete. Now, that could be an issue if that really did happen. If that really did happen, that could be an issue. If he truly said, well, it's only 1 year and they don't say anything, you could argue, well, I guess it really is only 1 year. Now, the court might also, the plaintiff is going to say, Benchmade is going to say, but yeah, you already knew it was 2 years, so we're not going to argue with you. They said plaintiff made no effort to ascertain whether the defendant was aware plaintiff thought the non-compete was 2 years. And they might say, we didn't know we had a 2-year non-compete. He told us 1 year and we thought it was 1 year. Now, when they talk about searching the employee's emails, there's no date for that. They say the plaintiff made no effort to determine whether these confidential documents were forwarded to the defendant or were in any way desirable. I'm sure some of them may have been. Now, they point out here the scope of the general counsel's knowledge in the agreement reference here must be considered in light of his admission. And they say, we have no idea. We've alleged on information and believe something, but we don't know actually what it is. And they say 5 days after filing the complaint, plaintiff approached employee for the first time to inform him they disputed his understanding of the law. Well, either somebody's telling the truth. Like, I can't imagine they're both this fucking wrong. I can't believe they're both this fucking wrong. This just seems... Something isn't adding up here, chat. Something's not adding up to me. So, plaintiff made zero effort to do so before filing the complaint and offers no excuse for the failure. They said plaintiff received a letter from the defendant informing them of the deficiencies with the complaint, but decided not to respond. Plaintiff dismissed the lawsuit after finally conducting a post-filing inquiry to determine there was no basis. Now, because of that, they're saying there can be no doubt plaintiff filed a frivolous lawsuit without a shred of evidence. Well, somebody's right, someone's wrong so far, and it's not clear who's telling the truth. In their opposition papers, they say that they dismissed it after the harm had been ameliorated, yet ignores the fact the plaintiff had zero evidence any harm had been threatened by the defendant or caused. They say, as to the non-compete, the difference in understanding between the parties, whether it was 1 year or 2, thus there was no immediate risk of relevant harm regarding the filing of a lawsuit. They say, as to alleged confidential information, plaintiff's responsive papers underscore the abject lack of any information defendant had any interest in the confidential information. And that is true. There's nothing in here that says they found emails where the guy sent it to his private email and they said, hey, this is Bob here at Montana Knife Company. Here's all the stuff you need. Click, 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 send. And then Montana Knife Company goes, oh, thank you, Bob. Thank you very much. We love you. XOXOXO. Catface. There's none of that. Now remember, it's notice pleading, but still, if you're going to allege all this stuff, like, you should be able to back it up pretty quick. But they use boilerplate allegations, and that's where you information and belief. MKC interfered with the improper purpose of obtaining Benchmade's information. They say the plaintiffs make no effort to explain the incongruity of their decision to file a complaint against the defendant, but not the employee, other than it was allegedly concerned about the reputational damage that could befall the employee. And this is where I think they kind of make some sense here. So which one's fucked up? I don't know. It's not clear. It's not clear. So they say this is incriminating in 2 ways. And they say, first, plaintiff admits they recognize the allegation in their complaint could cause permanent reputational damage, but they were apparently unconcerned about falsely inflicting such reputational damage on the defendant. And secondly, the plaintiff admits they use the threat of permanent reputational damage from the allegations as leverage against the employee. No, they point out that it's demonstrably true that they didn't speak to the employee until after they filed the complaint. They admit that the plaintiff failed to confront the employee on the alleged documents or inform him why they believe the non-compete was 2 years until 5 days after the complaint was filed. And they say, finally, plaintiff misses the mark regarding the lack for a preliminary injunction. They said, we're not faulting the plaintiff for not filing the preliminary injunction, but we're pointing out that not filing is further evidence you failed to conduct a reasonable inquiry into the circumstances, and there was no expedient need to file a lawsuit. And they're arguing you didn't file it because you weren't doing your job. And they say, and they go on for here, and they say, in an effort to expand their non-compete, plaintiff argues that where corporations operate nationally, Oregon courts routinely enforce nationwide non-competes. Yet, bizarrely, plaintiff cites 2 cases that don't support this at all. The first case has no indication into the geographic scope, aside from a footnote, which that ain't going to help you. Except in this one, the parties did not contest the scope or temporal scope of the agreement. The second case is unpublished, and therefore it's garbage. It is unable to be located in either LexisNexis or case text. Yeah, if it's not published, guys, remember, if it's not a published case, it's garbage. It's not helpful. You can't rely on it. It's not going to be really binding or persuasive. Stacy says, want to do a cookie tasting stream? I'm sure you make great cookies, Stacy. Last thing I need to be eating is cookies. I appreciate it, though. They say, though the Nike case cited does not contain the holding plaintiff represented, it does lay out 3 requirements under Oregon law to be enforceable. It's partially restricted in operation in respect to either time or place. It must be on some good consideration, and it must be reasonable. It should only afford a fair protection to the interests of the party who it's being made for. It must not be so large as to interfere with the interests of the public. And that's public policy. We can't have people restricted from working in Oregon. We can't be forcing people to have to move to go do work. So that is a concern there. So, and they say plaintiffs' non-compete forms fail to comply with these requirements and is therefore facially invalid. They say in conclusion, we do want our attorney's fees and we do want this done forward. And this is by the end of May. And we get to what the judge, where did it go? Oh, we get to the order now, chat. So what did the judge say here? And this was done on October 1st. I thought it was November 1st. We were a little 2 months behind. So what happened? He said the counsel not signed the motion and declaration, and he didn't address the defect in his reply. And he didn't. They say under Rule 11 of the Rules of Civil Procedure, all pleadings and motions must be signed by at least one attorney of record. The court must strike an unsigned paper unless the omission is promptly corrected after being called to the attorney's or party's attention. Plaintiff called the unsigned motion to the defendant's attention in the plaintiff's response, and the defendant did not correct the omission or even mention it in its reply. Thus, the court must strike the motion. Remember, chat, the rules are going to get you every time. The rules are going to get you every time, chat. It's the rules. They say similarly under other parts of United States Code, unsworn declarations under the penalty of perjury must be signed to be valid. You have to. Declarations have to be signed. An unsigned declaration is not valid evidence because nobody's agreeing to it. Nobody's agreeing to the penalties of perjury. And they say, even if the court were to overlook the fact defendant's counsel did not sign the motion for sanctions, and we'll go back to that real quick, chat. Let's see here. This is the motion for sanctions, right, guys? Motion for sanctions. Here we go. Motion for sanctions. And look, it's empty. Motion for sanctions. There's nothing there. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. There's no valid evidence in support of the defendant's motion. Thus, the court could not consider the declaration, even if the court could consider the defendant's motion, and the motion would fail. The court strikes the defendant's motion for imposition of sanctions pursuant to Rule 11. Or, I'm sorry, electronic filing 11. And it's done. So there you go. Where is... There you go, chat. Robert Winter says, I don't abide by their fake rules. Well, they're the rules, and you must obey them like as though they are the rules, the laws of gravity. All right? There's no getting around them. There is no getting around them. So you best believe them and you best follow them. So do I think that Benchmade, the way they come up with this, I wouldn't surprise me if they did what they did to this guy. But the fact they didn't sign all of it means it's gone. It's all irrelevant now. Do I think that Benchmade got spooked by the FTC ruling? No. Because if they were going to get spooked by it, they would have already dismissed it to start with. So I don't think that has any play in this case. So Access, which one's fucked up right now? It looks like, and what happened here, it's the defendant's attorney fucked up. They submitted unsigned declarations, and those are invalid. It's just, it's not even valid. You can't even consider them. You may as well have submitted blank sheets of paper. So we got a lot of stuff to get through here. Assholes React for $2 says, the out the front is my daily carry. Good for cutting sandwiches. Thank you. Malcolm says, do out the front knives operate like box cutters? Yeah, pretty much. Although, obviously, it's going to be a lot bigger than, it's going to be a lot more than that. There's a lot more flash and dash. T from Laos says how to make a knife. Well, yeah, there's, you know, maybe we'll do a. Maybe I'll if I can get out to the forge this winter, we'll do a stream about that and making a knife or trying to make a blade. Leedy says, I loved you with the Rising Sun, man. Do more with him. Letty, oh yeah, with Max Murrah. Well, yeah, I'll do more stuff with Max Murrah going forward. Max is a great guy. He's always funny, always a good time. And Letty is talking about our thing we did with Max over on Dolly's channel, talking about Pearl Harbor. We did that over on Saturday. It was a fun time, very fun time. Let's see here. Let's see. Hold on here. All right, we're gonna keep going from here. Sula says when I was doing the oil work, I was yes, I drink your milkshake. I drink it up. Yes. I know there's there was a parody of that. There will be Bud, and he talks about like smoking his weed, and he's like, and I took my bong rip all the way over here, and I cleared your bong. But yes, that was yes, fracking is drinking the milkshake sideways. Andrew Valentine says, big up Sean in chat. Alex Blackfoot says, could you tell them you can't rep them against your former firm? Yes. Like if I had been retained by a firm, like, well, if like a firm, like if I had, a firm said, hey, Sean, you want to come work for us? I'd be like, I can't. I'm under a 1.5 year non-compete. And here's all the companies we represented. You know, I could be like, well, who do you represent? And they would tell me. And I'm like, yeah, I can't represent those. Stacy says Sean sold his silence. Well, yeah, they paid for it. And I wasn't getting back in the industry, so it worked out. Toad Monkey says non-competes are gay and un-American. Freedom of contract, baby. Freedom of contract. Pretty American. Cedar Rose says, I was an oil man. No, I'd say I wouldn't consider myself an oil man. That's a different thing there, but I did oil work. Charles Hedrick says, if you already talked about knives, everyone should just buy zero tolerance. Benjamin's saying, so are you saying I should not reveal the speed line for Shaw's artificial turf operation? No, you should not. Scott says, if I sharpen a Baldo, is that a knife? No. Robin Hood says, this sounds super gay. They're making it fit the hand, fit the air knives, and not very good ones. Not. Yeah. And Robot Glock, we answered this earlier, but yeah, you don't want the court rewriting because the court may write it and fuck you over. It may give you a worse term than what you initially could have put out there. So there's always a benefit being reasonable and good faith and fair dealing when you make a document, because then you don't have to worry about somebody coming back and rewriting it or taking an axe to it. Whoopi Goldberg says, first time offender, baby. And Kimbo, yeah, like I mean, I said this earlier, the court could force you to not work. They could force you to fire the guy. And Matt says the knife business is properly small enough that you want to leave as good a terms as possible. Word get properly around if you're an ass. Well, who knows? Maybe this guy wasn't an ass. Maybe his employer was a dick. That, it's the other way around too, possibly. Oh, wow. That's a big booger. Jeez. I was just blinking, all of a sudden it's like green. I'm like, what? That was a lot of eye booger, chat. There's like still more in there. Jeez. Holy cow. It's just, it won't stop. It's in my eyes, chat. There we go. Epic Fantasy for $10 redues says thoughts on Aaron Imholt walking on his felony, lol, revenge porn, double lol charge. If further thoughts on the Ricada and Felton coping charges over the email scandalpalooza. Answer me, Sean. Sean. I could see Aaron walking on the felony stuff because You're going to have to show intents to harass and intimidate, and normally you plead shit down anyway. Shit gets pled down anyway, and it's just in the interest of justice. If you enter a misdemeanor, he'll take it. Who knows? I mean, I presumably so. I have not talked to Aaron about all that. I'm not his attorney, so I don't have any other insight to that if that's what you're hoping. I think it's bullshit still at the end of the day, and this is Nick just being a little bitch. And Nick, you know that. You're being a little bitch. Any thoughts on Nick and Felton fucking around with the emails? You guys are fucking idiots, and you're going to get burned. I hope the bar doesn't find out what you did, Nick. And Bad Weather Biker, yes, the Browning A5 is the finest Remington shotgun ever made. I'm the proud third generation over a 1930s model. Yes, the Browning A5 is the finest shotgun Remington ever made. And chat, see, you're like, well, wait, if it's made by Browning, and I'm like, there's a whole John Moses Browning did some crazy stuff out there. Fatty Caddy, we already covered that, but yeah. KLF says, yeah, the WWE has a 90-day no compete clause in their contracts. Yeah, it's only so long. You can only do it for so long. Fatty says Benchmade is actually in the right this time. I don't know. A worldwide prohibition is kind of bullshit. Ag Biochemist says Cleveland sounds harder up for weapons than New Orleans. Yeah, well. Adam A says I cashed in those big knife checks. Fatty Kitty says feel free to check out some of my knives on my channel. And then P-Dub is saying, why no Ronco love, Sean? Ron Papil just wants to have his knives in his rotisserie cooker. He just wants you to set it and forget it. Tax-free, bish. Ralph had officially been endorsed by Spyderco. Yes. Tax-free, bishes. Sean, do you have any insights into Ricado's EDC rotation? I have no idea. I can't imagine Nick carries anything. He probably carries around a cell phone, a Baldo, and then he carries around his little Coke bullet. I don't know. I don't know what he carries around. I'm pretty sure it's just a Baldo and a wallet and a cell phone. And he probably has to carry around a schedule for all his children's activities because it's so stressful. And Lenny says, Sean, my fixed blade knife caught me while cleaning a deer. Why didn't you warn me of the sharpness, Sean? Why, Sean? You're right. You're right. That's my fault. Yes, Letty knives are sharp. I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. Zaphael says, my non-compete crosses over in the multiverse. That's basically what this one does. Kung Fu Fish says, I signed non-compete with my former name, and UD is my last name. They didn't notice. Here's the problem, though. You can't, if you try to sign it as a different person or you make a different signature, that doesn't get you out of it normally. Okay, so you should talk to attorneys, but very commonly, what everybody will say is, "Well, you adopt that as your signature right then and there." So if you end up writing like meow and with a little cat smiling as your face, apparently that was your signature that day. That was your acknowledgement of the agreement. You wrote that. If people watch you write it, that could be your signature. And Robot Glock says Amazon has every employee, including temp workers, sign a non-compete, a very broad non-compete. Yeah, and you know what? Ultimately, Amazon's hope, like most of these yahoos, they could give a shit less about. But also, at the end of the day, Amazon's hoping they could bully anybody into not having to go get sued by Amazon. So, and Benjamin Lewis said they pay him some amount of severance to sign this contract. Appears not. They said we won't fucking sue you. Mystery Sniper says my life's last employer. All printers could know who printed, and they could reprint and fully trace the print. Yeah, that's the thing. If you've got a very tech savvy company, it gets to that point after a while. And then Assholes React says, later Sandwich King, off to start my show. Nerd. Well, thank you. And guys, Assholes React, it's a channel over here on YouTube. They hang out, they talk. I'm in Whiskey 77. Let's see here. Hold on here. So, oh, hold on. What am I looking for here? Then, where? Oh, crap! I lost where am I here? TV's Will Heron says, "Good evening, Sean. Hey, Will. Cedar Rose has been a member for 15 months. Your wife, Jack. Now, thanks. That's interesting. 15 months, Sean. 15 months. Thank you for the support, Cedar Rose. I appreciate that. Ag Biochemist, been a member for 20 months. Thank you, man. It says, looking sharp, Sean. Well, thank you. And then Nico's been a member for 13 months. Says, I see you played Knife a Spoony before. Yes. Thank you, Nico. The 10K view for $6.99 in Canadian dollars. 3.5 toonies, or just under 7 loonies, chat. That's a lot of loonies. Saying good coverage on the non-competes. Well, thank you. And more importantly, I think this is just a good example of, making sure you do your... Make sure you follow the rules, chat. Make sure you follow the rules to a T. And even then, remember, he had messed up, but he could have fixed it. And they didn't, so... Yeah, that's a bummer. He says like $5 US. Oh, you can't fool me. That's like $10. That's like $1 American. We know. Yeah, it's like 80 cents. Like $5 US. In what country? Manny says Rhodes v. Bonta. When? I've looked, and I'm gonna here on YouTube try to find a good oral argument for that. I found one, but it was like the guy was talking over it. And I don't really want that. I kind of want just like one that's open. So the Ninth Circuit did produce it, and they have video. They put it up. So I think it'll be pretty good. And we'll probably do that this week. It's only 45 minutes. So like probably Tuesday night or Wednesday night, we might have a 2 for that day. So Michelle has been a member for 11 months, says, I have more months than locals. Thanks, Sean. Well, thank you for the support anyway, you guys. Thank you for the support. And the Ninth Circuit has playing coverage. Yeah, I know they do. And it took me a minute to find it, but yes. It's only 9:30. I might actually do a model stream, J-Rock, because I was working on this during Flashcast. So like we got an update on the Dauntless. Like, you ready, chat? Check this out. Bob says, I found Road v. Bont on the Night Circus channel. I know. I just said I found that too. If you guys want to see, check this out, chat. We got the blue on it, chat. We're getting close. We're getting close to the painting. So, yes, I found the Ninth Circuit oral arguments are only 45 minutes long. We'll probably work on those this week. We are also going to work on the Drake and Kendrick Lamar thing. Drake and Kendrick Lamar, they've got their own... they got beef, as the kids might say. They got beef. J-Rock says it was funny in Flashcast. I wasn't secretly making it. I was just doing it. And, I was commenting and being part of it, everything too. Yeah. Like, no big deal. No big deal. Like, so we've got that. And that's where, hold on here. Let me make sure I got everything where I need it to be. But yes, the Drake and Kendrick Lamar one, that one will probably be a full one when we do it Tuesday or Wednesday. That'll be a fun one to do. Sean put Clyde on stream for Flash, didn't talk much. Well, we did talk. There's just some things like I don't know who Barbarella is in some of those comics. Like, I'm not a big comic guy, so I can't really comment on that stuff. But that's okay. They talk about comics. It's all right. That's their thing. If we want to sit there and talk about World War II dive bombers, I'm sure some of them would have nothing to say. Jay Wolfenstein has been a member for 3 months. Says, hi, Sean. Finally caught a stream live. Woohoo! Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Adam A says, I'm starting a company. We'll pay 10x. You have to sign non-compete and fire you all within 1 day. Thoughts? Well, it depends. If you hire me just so you can fire me and then on the non-compete and play, yeah, that's going to be seen as abuse. So I wouldn't recommend that. I wouldn't recommend doing that. Don't be a dickhead is my recommendation when it comes to doing business because it'll bite you in the ass. Barbarella was a comic? I guess it is. I don't even know what the hell it was. I just know Sydney Sweeney's going to do it, and she's got big old titties, so that's the only thing there. Barbarella's a movie? Okay, well, I don't know what the hell it's all about. Michael Savage, is he's still alive? That guy's radio show is still going? He calls that district the Ninth Circuit Court of Schlemiels. Oh. Barbarella's where Duran Duran got their name. Ah. Interesting. The movie starred Jane Fonda. Okay, well. Barbarella's space cheesecake at its finest. I don't get the reference there. So. Oh. DF Idiot says Drake and Kendrick mutual combat win. Oh, that would be hilarious. That would be hilarious. So, all right, chat. So that's it. We're all done here. And like I said, it's a very, it sounds like it's a really good lawsuit. And it's like they're, getting ready. The two Titans are gonna just like, oh, they're gonna have a knife fight. And then all of a sudden, it just kind of like, whoa, it just dies with a whimper. You're like, oof. Just dies with a whimper. That's how it goes sometimes. Shit just ends and it disappears. You're like, what happened? You're like, oh, I don't know. All right, chat. So give me a couple minutes here. We'll get started on that. I got to make sure we're all set for tonight here at the hacienda. And yeah, in the meantime, chat, just remember, just because you signed it, your global non-compete may not be valid. It certainly doesn't look good. So good night, chat. Take care. Brittany says, pimp your other channel. Yes. So guys, we are going to be going over to, we're going to do this. We're not going we're not going to do it here on Potentially Criminal. We are going to do it on my model channel. So we are going to go over to, we're going to go over to here. We're going to go over to this place. We're going to go Sean's model bench. We're going to hang out here and finish up this stuff tonight. So, and Iconoclast thing, I watched Channel 1 News. You mean like when Anderson Cooper was on it, like back in like when I was in high school? Yeah, we had to watch that every day. As like a cheat, like as a way like we'd actually learn about what's going on in the world. Yes. Anderson CIA Cooper. Jarek says, but you can't get there. Well, if you guys subscribe, I've got the hours. I just need people watching. I need to get it over. I just need your guys' help. I need your help, chat. I need the help. You guys got to help me. You got to help me get me over the hump, chat. And J-Rock, if you help me, then I can do that. So it's you, J-Rock. It is you who's not loyal. Pin the chat. Yes. It was Lisa Ling when I watched it. Yeah. J-Rock says, oh, so it's our fault now? Yes. Yes, it's your fault, Anderson Cooper. Oh, wait, why Anderson Cooper worked for the CIA? I hope it's not your fault. I mean, if it is, J-Rock, we got a lot to talk about here. So there they are. I already subbed. Well, you guys all need to be over there. J-Rock, I'll make you a mod on that channel. How about that? I don't scratch backs. I give a nice sensual rub down. I got magic fingers. So I will see you guys over there. Give me about 15 minutes or so, and we'll get started on this. So I'll see you guys over there in a little bit. But yes, chat, remember, don't sign global non-competes. Please don't sign a global non-compete. That's just really bad. So good night, chat. I'll see you guys in a little bit.
Weapons, blacksmithing, and models of planes, esoteric works, and even some trains. Much merriment had while drinking White Claws, tips on hunting, and even talking the law. Whatever you do, just don't talk to cops, even when they nab you on illegal stops. Just 'cause you did it doesn't mean you're guilty, but please talk to a local attorney. Was that the
I need both.
guy that Kaden yelled at?
Thank you, Kristen.